Join us as we search Alaska and beyond for mysterious creatures, featuring Beans Baxter and Rob Roy Menzies. This is the Alaska Bigfoot Studies. All right, well, welcome to my Halloween special. I am having a ball. I am in an actual studio with the Freaky Deaky Podcast. Oh, yeah. Tell us a little bit about the podcast, guys.
Well, Scott's much better explaining the podcast than me.
The podcast started about 4 years ago, roughly, and the entire premise behind it was that my father-in-law, Christian, doesn't believe in ghosts or spirits or demons or any of that stuff. And I was like, we need to make a podcast where I pretty much just try to convince you over the span of time that these things exist. And when we get to that point, the podcast will be over. And unfortunately, as you can tell now, we just recorded an episode. We are not there yet.
Unfortunately, this is a fortunate thing that we can keep going. If
I know that, I think deep down you believe in this stuff. You just don't want to admit it because then you know that I'd be like, well, I guess the podcast is over. We figured it out, right? And so you're like, no, ghosts aren't real. It's fine. Let's keep going.
Well, this is great because you guys are here in South Central Alaska. Mm-hmm. And I will throw links to their YouTube channel, but they're also on a bunch of podcast platforms. But for the Halloween special, I wanted to get a creepy story from each of you. So think about, because I know that's all you guys do is talk about creepy stories. Think
Pretty
about
much
kind of what your favorite creepy story is for me.
Do you have one?
I have. Yes, I do.
Let's hear it.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. Mine, and I'm going to try to tell it from memory. I think we've discussed it on the podcast before. But basically, this is in Alaska, and there's an archaeological team that goes out to one of the villages and is excavating basically this thing along the coast. It's like a place where Alaska natives lived long ago. Mm-hmm. The tribe is a little ways away from this area they're excavating, but they get to work. They have permission to do it. And through the excavation, somehow they're going through these dwellings where these people lived, and they're finding these large arrowheads, way larger than what humans would have used at any time in history. Oh, boy. And it comes out, like, I think there's visions that go on, and the excavators actually see what happened, and it's an attack by basically Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Whoa. A long time ago, somehow these people had kind of done something wrong or were in the wrong area. And so a group of Sasquatch came down with huge, like bow and arrow, but bigger than what a normal human would have. Okay. Attacked this little village, killed everybody in it. And I mean, these people knew they were going to be attacked, so they brought everything of importance into their huts. I think there were even boats in some of these huts that they'd use. Because their boats were being destroyed, and that was their livelihood at the time. Wow. And it got to the point where the head of the village came over and basically asked them to leave because whatever they had kind of awakened was going through their village and causing a bunch of trouble. And the chief didn't know how long ago this war had happened, mm-hmm. but an oral tradition, so it could have been thousands of years, just passed down for thousands of years. And whatever they did, things were running amok through their village, causing trouble. And a couple of these archaeologists actually experienced what the villagers did when they were attacked and killed all those years ago. It was just creepy to think about, because we hear about Bigfoot all the time. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we hear violent stuff, but most of it's not that violent. Right. It's just a creature trying to live out in the world and probably should be left alone by most of us. But this one, like you hear in Alaska sometimes, is a little bit more violent than your typical story.
Yeah.
And just the whole time travel thing, going back in time and seeing what happened and finding the evidence always fascinated me on that one.
Wow. Interesting story. Do you have an idea of what kind of region it happened in?
I can't remember right off the top of my head. but more Western Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'd have to look it up again. We've done an episode where we talked about it, but it's been a little while.
Love it.
I think it came out of maybe one of Rusty Wilson's books, if I remember
sounds
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
I know. Myself, I'm not sure I have a favorite because I actually really enjoy all of these things. Like everything we talk about is pretty great. I am a big fan of a lot of the Ouija board stories that come out. And I think those might just be my favorite because I'm trying to convince you that this stuff is actually real and stuff happens that is wild and out there and nobody believes. And
I believe the Ouija board's a toy. So
that has been made painfully clear over the last 4 years. Every time we talk, I'm like, do you believe now? Do you get it? He's like, no. But yeah, pretty much a lot of the cryptids and stuff like that we talk about. Recently we did an episode on Mothman, and I was kind of blown away by the amount that I didn't know about Mothman. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that alone, the stories that are involved with that is actually pretty wild. I have a lot of my own personal paranormal experiences that have happened to me a lot of the time when I was younger. But I guess one of the creepiest that has something to do with the Ouija board, poor Christian's heard this story about 50 times now, but I was at a karaoke bar in Las Vegas and I met this girl. We exchanged numbers and she comes over to my place and we watch a movie. When she leaves, the following 4 days, or 4 nights, I should say, each night I woke up and there was some shadow figure entity at the end of my hallway one night. And then the second night it was in my doorway. And when I noticed it, it dashed behind some of these photography lights that we have, this type of stuff. And the third night I woke up to a crash and I thought it was my cat at the time, but it turned out it was one of these exact lamps that's right here, these little stand up three tier ones. And it crashed to the ground. I thought it was my cat. And so I'm yelling at my cat when I wake up. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And I look over and she's laying in bed next to me with her ears perked back like she's freaked out. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. And on the fourth night, the girl comes back over and I start telling her about all this weird stuff that's been going on in my apartment. And she's like, that's so weird because everyone or a lot of my friends have seen this, but I've never seen it myself. And she goes in to tell me this story that her and her friends played with a Ouija board and something attached to her. And it apparently goes by the name Zach or something like that. She's like, I get followed around by some 6-year-old demon boy named Zach. And I'm like, huh. And so I'm explaining in detail all the stuff that I've seen. And she's like visibly upset that someone else has once again seen it, but she never has had the opportunity to see it. And me, now I'm freaked out. I was raised a good little Christian boy. I'm like, I don't like demons. I don't do any of that stuff. But it literally took me, I think, a month after finding that out. It took me a month of, I guess, cleansing the house to actually feel at peace in that home. And it kind of escalated to the point where, for me, at least, the peak of that was that I was apparently asleep on the couch one Saturday. And I had this, what I now know is a dream of this entity filling the doorway of my apartment that led to my bedroom, the same place I saw it a few nights prior. And it takes the shape of this shadow person. And I'm freaking out, just sitting on the couch, like, what the hell is going on? And it moves towards me a couple feet and then a couple more feet. And then it just lunges on me and like literally pins me down to the couch and is choking me by the neck. And I wake up still choking, not able to breathe for like another 15 to 20 seconds or something like that. And this was broad daylight. Apparently I fell asleep right in the exact same spot that the shadow person in this dream decided to choke me out. And I believe is the same entity that this girl brought over to my apartment. But needless to say, I had to decide between seeing this woman further or, peace of mind. And I ultimately decided, I'm sure my mom is happy about that. I'm like, you know what? I'd prefer a demon not infest my apartment any longer. But so that's probably the creepiest thing that's happened to me personally. And I've had tons of stories over the years, but that's one that sticks because there's actually someone that kind of corroborated what I was seeing before she even knew that I was seeing something. And yeah, so that's why I don't play with Ouija boards.
Don't play with Ouija boards.
Don't play with Ouija boards.
I
Yeah.
agree. All right. Well, thank you. And I hope to come out and do some more stories with you guys. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, we need to set up an actual like video and stuff like that. We can get all this going and honestly just dive into some of Alaska's creepy stuff. It's our favorite.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chuke.
So one of the creepiest stories about Alaska that I ever heard, I heard it while I was researching Abandoned, The History and Horror of Port Chatham, the book I wrote about Port Chatham. And it has to do with Kachemak Bay here. And there was a group of hunters, native hunters out in their little bidarkas, which are kind of like canoes. And they're out on a hunting trip, and they're in the bay paddling around, and they see another group of hunters and another bidarka. And they can't really see them, but they're like, who are those guys? Because they know all the other hunters from all the other villages nearby. And they're like, we don't recognize those guys. Let's go see who they are and see what they're up to. So they all paddle furiously to try and catch up to the strangers. And the strangers seem to like start paddling faster, like they're trying to stay away from them, like they're trying to elude them. So they kind of have like a little bidarka race where the hunters are trying to catch up to the strangers. And finally, they catch up to the strangers, and the strangers are kind of hiding their face and they won't look at them. And eventually the hunters are just like, what is going on? Like, show yourselves. Who are you? And finally the strangers reveal their faces, and they only have one eye in the center of their heads and their foreheads. And the hunters are shocked, and they're like, whoa, what's going on? Who are you? And they say, well, we have a hidden village nearby here, and we're shunned by most people because of the way we look. So we try not to like intermingle with the normal people, and we've been here for years. And they talk a little bit, and they end up like exchanging meat with them. They have a good interaction, and then they part ways, but they never see them again. And that was just, to me, one of the creepiest things, because it almost gives Port Chatham a Skinwalker Ranch type vibe, where you have a lot of different activity kind of intermingling. You have the stories about Bigfoot, you have the ghost stories, you have the strange disappearances and murders, and now you have these strange one-eyed people. And, are they connected? Are they not connected? Is Port Chatham a window area? Who knows? But that was probably the most surprising thing that I found during my research of that book, because I'd never heard anything quite like it. And I didn't find anything else like that. No other references to the one-eyed people. So, I don't know what it is, but it's certainly creepy. And every once in a while, I wonder, are those one-eyed people still out there somewhere, still just living off the land?
Well, I just had a little Halloween special film off with the Freaky Deaky Podcast.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
These guys are a lot of fun.
Thanks for the hot sauce.
And we might have, they're making hot sauce
I want to
now.
sell it here.
Pretty interesting,
Yeah.
So we might have to hear the story again. It's kind of an annual thing. Think of the creepiest story that you've heard here in Alaska.
Oh, that I've heard or that I've experienced?
Either or.
Ooh.
I know you've told the Juneau story a couple times, and I'm open to that because it's a great
story.
story.
The Blood Bridge story.
Yeah. But if there's any other creepy stories you can think of.
Oh, boy. I was not prepared for this. There's creepy stories. Oh, you might have to pause this. I have to think.
All right, we found a story.
Okay, I think I've told Chuke this one, but it was pretty good. This comes from my teenager days in Juneau, and this was I wasn't there, but I knew a bunch of guys that were there. It was in Juneau, Alaska, in the '80s, and it was on Montana Creek Road, which anybody from Juneau knows where I'm talking about. There's the gun range down there. We used to be able to drive all the way down to the end. They have since put big boulders halfway down the road, right before the bridge, which I call Blood Bridge, But so you can only park and then you got to walk all the way. Okay. But in the day, you used to be able to drive all the way to the end, and it was a fun kind of area for us teenagers to just be teenagers.
Yeah.
A lot of it involved our guns,
right.
shooting guns and beer and just BSing.
Right.
Anyway, so there were a bunch of guys out there, about 12 guys total. It was nighttime. Now, it's an end of a road. It's very squatchy. This is Juneau, Alaska, rainforest, big trees, thick forests. There's a beautiful stream right next to it full of salmon. It's a very pretty place, but it can get really creepy sometimes too.
Yeah.
So anyway, these guys are out there having a good time. They're all heavily armed.
Right.
That's the big thing. They've been shooting guns, just shooting cans or shooting, not like, out of control, shooting stuff responsibly as we could back then. But from the darkness of the woods, this is how it was explained to me by few of the guys that were there.
Right.
Is something made a sound that sounded like some giant gasping air, like, which they all stopped talking and they looked into the forest where this sound came from.
Right.
And they all looked at each other and they, did you hear that? And then it did it again. It made this ginormous and apparently the second time it did this, it just scared everyone. It was unnatural. Somebody yelled into the woods even, "Hey dude, that ain't funny. We're armed to the teeth. We're gonna start shooting." And they're all everybody's getting excited and this thing does it again.
Wow.
And from what they say, they all just started unloading and all just started shooting into this area where this noise was coming from. And they stopped shooting, and the silence, and that one more time. And then they said it was like a shadow just flew up over their heads and went gone.
Wow.
And not like a machine thing. I got the impression they were saying it was like an entity of some kind.
Wow.
Just flew over their heads and gone. So that was one of the creepier stories from Montana Creek.
Super creepy. When you tell that story, I imagine like a weird giant vampire bat.
Yeah, like a Mothman thing or something out there.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I've never heard. I know that's the only thing I've ever heard of Juneau. Now I had my own experience out there, and I don't know what it was, but I don't know. Maybe there's owls out there. I don't know what it could have been, but I mean. As many guys as there were, every one of them were armed, and they all started laying into this thing, or whatever it was, and it still made the noise, and something flew over their heads. That's kind of weird.
Super.
It's a great story though. Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers. Absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, check out the Bigfoot Art Gallery on Facebook.